Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Shadow, hounds, endless void out the window. You can hardly tell whether there is some kind of space whizzing past, or trees, or the gullet of some fantastically huge animal. Being able to see the stars helps, but the roof of the car keeps getting in the way. The landscape keeps shifting from open to covered. You think you remember Mom saying you would be driving through some forest soon. You can't sleep. Days in the car, and everything is stiff and sore. A few more hours, they say, like they mean it. I mean, you knew it would be a long trip. Cross country is a long way to go. But staring out a small window at passing scenery that largely doesn't change from state to state is mind-numbingly boring. A flicker in the corner of your eye, but you know better than to turn your head. You might be tired, 3/4 asleep, but you know you aren't seeing things. Your heart speeds up. Your breaths quicken. You strain your peripheral vision to get a better idea of what is running alongside the car. Again, always at night, especially in the darkest places. A nightmare of sleek muscles, open, panting jaws, and long legs ending in what looks like razor-sharp claws, all ebony black, invisible if you looked at it dead on. No discerning features in the blackness. Nothing you could pinpoint to show someone else the demon dogs running next to the car. And yes, dogs. Sometimes it was just one. And how you know it's the same one all the time, you'll never be able to tell. Other times, there are several. Considering their color and tendency to sort of bleed or ooze over each other, it's impossible to tell exactly how many there are at times. They run constantly beside the car, seeming to brush up against it at times. They don't make any noise. You can't tell if they are physical things, though the fact no one else sees them and they disappear in any light says something. Their slavering jaws drip, though it doesn't smear on the glass, nor does their breath fog the windows. They just are. Nothing about them really screams menace, despite how they look. They don't pay attention to the occupants of the car much, don't seem to notice when you try to avoid their eyes. They run, eyes forward, coursing into the night with you. Suddenly, you see one dart off the road into the darker shadows under the trees. the others gather closer to the car, seeming to close ranks and become more alert as they run. You strain your eyes in the darkness, trying to pierce the void of the deepest shadows. What would they be running after? Some kind of prey? Some kind of threat? And a threat to whom? You or them? You slow your breathing as much as you can. Try to tune out the hush of the tires and the air conditioner. You try not to think about smothering your mother for that little snore cough she's doing. She really can't help it. It's just covering up. Was that a noise? A crunch scream in the distance? Damn it, there are too many smaller noises around, covering anything up. You start to pant and sweat, worried about what you did or didn't hear. You keep glancing at the rest of the pack, trying to read their body language. Is that a snarl? Is that one staring off into the woods or ahead of the car? Are they moving closer, more carefully, or picking up speed again and relaxing? An interminable amount of time later, the other shadow hound suddenly bounds out of the blackness ahead, turning sharply to take up his place in the pack again. Whoa. You scan him, looking for any sign of what happened. Then you laugh at yourself, because how can you tell if a shadow is bleeding or hurt? You relax and start to drift off, finally lulled by the swaying of the car and the shushing of the tires. Your eyes close and you sleep. Weightlessness, briefly. Then pain as you slam into the seats in front of you. Breathlessness as your body adjusts from being asleep to awake so abruptly. You scramble upright, or as upright as you can get, trying to get your bearings. The car is twisted around, now facing the woods across from where you were traveling. You can see skid marks, and the front of the car is all banged up, like you hit something. But there's nothing in the road, nothing in front of the vehicle. You check on your parents. They're fine, but look like they got knocked out during the crash. They are both bleeding a bit, but nothing seems serious. You try to gently wake them, but don't want to accidentally hurt them. You look around for your phone, remembering you need to call for help. As soon as your fingers touch it on the floorboard, you feel a growl in your chest. Then you hear the deep grumbling from outside the car. Snapping upright, you look frantically around in front of the car, looking for whatever made that malicious sound. You see nothing until you catch a flicker in the corner of your eye. With dread, you make yourself focus on your peripheral vision, scared to see what is making the sound. It's big. You can almost catch glimpses of scales as it moves, gliding around the light. This one, whatever it is, does seem to have mass. You can see the trees shifting and swaying, like there is a breeze blowing through them, but only as it passes. The others are still as stone. You check quickly around and don't see any of the shadow hounds. Were they scouting for this thing, leading it to you somehow? Did this thing kill them all? Or did they run when it attacked your car? Because you're fairly certain this is what caused the collision. Impossible to tell. You couldn't even tell whether they acknowledged your presence or not on the road, other than as an object to race, a sound, a whistle that turns into a high-pitched giggle, a howl and shriek, all in one. It repeats around the little clearing, growing louder and more melodic, until it stops. Suddenly, you see the hounds lunging and leaping. Trying to keep track of the movement is impossible. You can only catch tiny fragments of glimpses from the corners of your eyes, but you can hear the yips and snarls, the sound of impact from the tussle. Eventually, there is a deeper, pain-filled snarl that rends the air, then crashing and banging through the trees as the high-pitched howl shriek begins again. This time, sounding triumphant, you sit there, breathing slowly as you strain to listen. A huff at the window, a brush of almost fur against that side of the car. You slide your eyes that way to see as much as you can out of the corner. The biggest hound, the one you consider the leader of the pack, stares back at you and slowly blinks. He nods and you nod back, grateful for the protection. Your parents start to stir and moan, and you remember your phone. You look down to dial 911 and glance back around you as you start to talk to the operator. You can see the pack out there, taking up a defensive perimeter. You sigh and relax, knowing you are safe from any more dangerous shadows. The Alpha stands to the side, taking up an outer perimeter watch. He looks back at the car, knowing that soon it will be time to bond with his mage. She's almost ready. The attack tonight was proof of that. But she is strong. She did not panic, did not scream. She trusted them. He knows they will have a strong bond. He grins fiercely, showing all of his teeth. Yes, they will work nicely together. The shadow of the past. In the depths of the hospital's darkest ward, I sat beside my grandfather's bed. The only sound, the faint hum of the life support machines. The air was heavy with the stench of decay, and the flickering fluorescent lights above cast eerie shadows on the walls. "Kiddo," he whispered, his voice like a rusty gate creaking in the wind. "I got something to tell you." I leaned in close, my heart racing with anticipation. "What is it, Grandpa?" He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with the effort. "I was involved in a ritual many years ago. A young woman was sacrificed, and I helped cover it up. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My grandfather, the man I'd always admired and respected, was capable of such a horrific act? Why are you telling me this now? I asked, trying to process my emotions. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, kiddo. I'm so sorry. I've carried this guilt with me for so long, and I don't want to take it to my grave. I looked at my grandfather, seeing him in a new light. I felt a mix of emotions: shock, anger, sadness, and compassion. Grandpa, I said, my voice soft, I forgive you, but I need to ask you something. What's that, kiddo? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you want me to reveal the truth, or keep your secret safe? Grandpa's face contorted in a mixture of pain and relief. Please, kiddo, keep my secret safe. I don't want to hurt anyone else with my mistakes. I nodded, feeling a weight settle upon my shoulders. I'll keep your secret, Grandpa. But promise me one thing. What's that, kiddo? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Promise me you'll find peace. Finally. You've carried this burden for so long. It's time to let it go. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears again, and he nodded, a small smile on his lips. I promise, kiddo. I'll find peace. Finally. As I sat there, holding my grandfather's hand, I knew that I would keep his secret safe, but I also knew that I would carry the weight of that secret with me forever. The darkness closed in around us, and I could feel the presence of the unknown, lurking just beyond the edge of perception. I knew that I had to make a choice, to reveal the truth, or to keep the secret hidden. And as I looked into my grandfather's eyes, I knew that I would choose the latter. For in the world of shadows and secrets, sometimes the truth is better left unspoken. The machines surrounding us beeped and whirred, a constant reminder of my grandfather's mortality. I looked at him, seeing the pain and guilt etched on his face. Grandpa, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I'll keep your secret safe, but promise me one thing. What's that, kiddo? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Promise me you'll find peace. Finally. You've carried this burden for so long. It's time to let it go. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears again, and he nodded, a small smile on his lips. I promise, kiddo. I'll find peace. Finally. As the darkness closed in around us, I knew that I would keep his secret safe. But I also knew that I would carry the weight of that secret with me forever. And as I looked into my grandfather's eyes, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. A glimmer of evil, a spark of malevolence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. I knew then that I had made a terrible mistake. I had promised to keep my grandfather's secret safe, but I had no idea what horrors that secret might unleash. As the machines surrounding us beeped and whirred, I knew that I was trapped in a living nightmare, with no escape in sight. Here is a prequel to the story. Origins, New Orleans, 1955. Etienne Lafleur, a young and ambitious occultist, stood in the dimly lit chamber, surrounded by the members of the mysterious Order of the Red Hand. The air was thick with the scent of incense and something else, something darker. "Brothers and sisters," Etienne began, his voice dripping with conviction, "we stand at the threshold of a new era, an era of power, of knowledge, of transcendence." The members of the order nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "But to achieve this goal," Etienne continued, "we must be willing to make sacrifices, to push the boundaries of what is acceptable, of what is human." The members of the order murmured among themselves, their voices filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Etienne raised his hands, and the room fell silent. "I propose that we perform the ritual of the Red Hand," he said, his voice dripping with anticipation. "A ritual that will grant us the power to transcend the limitations of the human form." The members of the order nodded in agreement, and Etienne began to outline the details of the ritual. As the night wore on, the members of the order prepared for the ritual, their movements filled with a sense of urgency and anticipation. And Etienne, the young and ambitious occultist, stood at the center of it all, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. The ritual began, and the members of the order chanted and swayed, their voices and movements building to a crescendo of power and energy. And at the center of it all, Etienne stood, his eyes fixed on the young woman who was to be the sacrifice. The ritual reached its climax, and the young woman screamed as Etienne plunged the dagger into her heart. The members of the order cheered and chanted, their voices filled with a sense of triumph and power. And Etienne, the young and ambitious occultist, stood at the center of it all, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. But as the ritual came to a close, Etienne felt a sense of unease, a sense of guilt and regret. He looked down at the young woman's lifeless body, and he knew that he had made a terrible mistake. The ritual may have granted him power, but it had also cursed him with a guilt that would haunt him for the rest of his life. And as Etienne walked away from the ritual chamber, he knew that he would never be able to escape the shadow of the past, the inheritance. Christ, Beck snapped, giving a start. Before her stood a tall man in a butler's suit. His lips curled, and he lifted a sardonic brow as he gave a small, mocking bow. Her eyes moved from his oddly fat feet up his short, sturdy legs, where the tail of his coat hung below his knees, and moved back and forth in the slight breeze. His hips were narrow, but his long body widened into a thick paunch. Then his chinless head squatted on shoulders, no wider than his girth. His long, thin nose occupied his face. "You frightened the bejesus out of me. Who the hell are you?" she asked. "Who is this? And why is he inside my aunt's house? And why is he dressed in a black suit straight from the early 20th century?" His smile widened into a toothy grin. "Falstaff, the butler, at your service, ma'am." His hooded eyes blinked slowly, and he bowed again. The man was repulsive to look at, but Beck was drawn into the dark depths of his strange eyes. With an effort, she broke their gaze. Auntie had a butler? She never said. Over the years, Beck had kept in contact via letters. Aunt Bess didn't own a computer, and now Auntie was gone, presumed dead. That's what the police said. It was obvious to Beck that they had given up hope of finding her great-aunt. Falstaff cleared his throat to reclaim her wandering attention. The left side of his upper lip curled in a smile. Or was that a snarl? "I think, if you check, you will find mention of me in Bess's will. She and I became very close. She was alone." He paused. "And lonely. What the hell is this guy insinuating? Auntie allowed you to call her Bess?" She swallowed hard. "Surely not. As I said, she was lonely. She felt deserted. She loved me." His lips opened over his large teeth in an approximation of a cheeky grin. "Like a son. She wanted to change her will, but before she could, she disappeared." "It's not true," Beck gasped. "She would never. She loved me. I loved her. I'm her niece, grand-niece, whatever, who never visited her. I was overseas. If it's any business of yours." Why was she defending herself against the hired help? What he was saying was preposterous. Beck gritted her teeth. "I'm her niece. I'm blood." "Yes, blood." Falstaff blinked slowly. Was he goading her? Blood. So much thicker than water. He licked his lips. "As you say, whatever. The will was not changed, and I remain Falstaff the butler, at your service, ma'am." He clicked his heels and gave another little bow, stepped back, and gestured for her to enter. She ignored him. She didn't need his invitation. "I was hoping to revisit the old place alone, so you can go back to wherever butlers go, and I'll look after myself." A wry smile tugged at her mouth. "I sound just like Great Aunt Bess at her autocratic best." An apology automatically rose to her lips. To hell with that. Just who does this guy think he is? Freaking creep. Why am I so jittery? Her tongue flicked out over her red lips, but she kept her gaze steady. "The house is mine." Falstaff's smile disappeared. His nostrils flared, and his coal-black, unblinking eyes stared down his long nose. Beck lifted her chin and stared back. Prick. With head and oomph stiff, he turned on his heel into the gloomy interior. "What's with the fancy dress costume?" she demanded. He turned around, the movement a slither of insolence. "Oh, just something our Aunt Bess liked to do for guests," he replied. How dare he? Our Aunt Bess, indeed. She liked to relive history. It gave our visitors a bit of a thrill. Tourists are stupid. There it was again, that infuriating superiority and mockery. We could, and did, frighten the fools with tall tales of hauntings and death. Aunt Bess and I enjoyed the game. Solid, sensible Aunt Bess playing dress-up? Surely not. I want to be alone. Falstaff bowed smartly as he replied, "Perhaps Madam would like me to bring her bags in. Shall I put them in the master bedroom?" "Sure. Why not?" She tossed him the car keys, which he snapped up with his left hand in a strangely smooth and agile movement for someone who looked so awkward in his own skin. He moved forward. She backpedaled as he passed, surprised and confused by a fleeting apprehension. Shaking herself, she stepped onto the black and white marble tiles of the foyer. Automatically, her hand reached to the right and flicked the switch. The brassy brightness of electric light pushed the shadows back. The old Dutch lamp still hung above the entrance, but an ugly black cord snaked through the decorative fretwork and into the base where it connected to a bulb, instead of the genteel neglect of her memory. The harsh electricity showed dilapidated antique furniture and fading decor. She threw her red bag onto the armchair, making a bloody splash against the faded green velvet. She kicked off her red stilettos, making a matching puddle on the floor. She noticed a dimmer switch and twisted the knob. "That's better." A smile curved Beck's mouth as she gazed around. Her mother had brought 8-year-old Becky here to live, just for a few weeks, until after the divorce. Becky ended up staying for 36 months, during which, under the generous care of her forthright great-aunt, she blossomed. Aunt Bess taught her that you could love without anger, manipulation, and shouting. Beck bit her lip to prevent the tears. Be sensible. Auntie was very old. She had a good innings. Beck heard the old lady's rusty voice. Buck up, girlie. That's life. Look to the future. Yuch! Beck wrinkled her nose. What was that disagreeable, swampy smell? She spun slowly around. A veil of dust made everything appear out of focus. Hang on. I thought that guy said he was the butler. Why is everything so dusty? Moving further down the hall, she said aloud, Lazy bastard. He is so gone. when I get settled, thud, thump, thud, thump, thud, thump. Beck froze, heart pulsing painfully in her throat. She turned and saw the butler's legs disappear around the curve of the stairwell. Had he heard her? Too bad. Perhaps it will improve his attitude. His tread thudded resentfully into the dusty carpet as the back corner of the valise thumped the stair. Thud, thump. Beck laughed and returned to exploring her surroundings. Bet the bossy old broad's turning in her grave, she murmured, running a well-manicured finger tipped in blood over the arm of the settee. A photograph of the fabulous old Tartar, looking her imperious best, glared down at Beck from high on the wall. She always appeared fearsome until you got to know her, Beck thought with affection. She squinted at the picture in the golden gloom. Good grief, it could be me, she thought. The Aunt Bess in the picture was younger than when Beck knew her. Straight-backed, strong and indomitable in her khaki riding habit. She held a rifle over her left shoulder and rested one leather-booted foot on the head of a dead lion. I was so happy here, Beck said, addressing the portrait. I did love you, you know. I'm so sorry if you felt I neglected you. She swallowed back her tears. Where did you disappear to, Auntie? I'll find you, I promise, or die trying. Her eyes moved down the hall. Instead of snarling from the wall by the side of the photo, a once beautiful lion's head stared up at the ceiling from atop a glass-fronted credenza. Just another tattered remnant of the past. Fierce eyes, now dull with dusty cataracts. Its roar inaudible. Back then, timid as Becky was, she had been fascinated by the ferocious head, mesmerized by such a powerfully alive image of death. Come on, touch her, child, Aunt Bess said. I killed her myself while Gunter and I were on safari. Must be 15 years ago. She won't bite, I promise. Her great-aunt placed Becky's small hand on the coarse, furry head. Oh, Becky breathed. A real lioness. Magnificent, isn't she? Aunt Bess's stern face lit up, and her smoky laughter boomed through the house. To the left of the credenza stood the same hall table Beck remembered from her childhood, topped by the same glass tank containing the same dead reptiles. A baby crocodile and two stumpy-tailed blue-tongue lizards still lurked in the semi-dark. At 8, she had no knowledge of anything other than the small, untidy city unit where she and her parents lived. How exciting this strange house had seemed to her. What wonders it held. What are they? Becky asked. Her great-aunt took some pains with her explanations, enjoying the chance to educate. Becky's attention wandered as her eyes explored the other photos and memorabilia on the walls. Come with me. Aunt Bess grabbed the little girl's hand and led her to a door hidden behind the staircase. Open it, she commanded. Becky looked up. Go ahead, her aunt encouraged, her eyes promising excitement and adventure. Becky's hand turned the large metal knob and pulled the door's heaviness wide. They descended into the cool cellar. Along with the root vegetables and pantry shelves loaded with preserves and pickles, stood a long glass case containing an enormous saltwater crocodile, caught mid-snap. That's the croc that got my Gunter. I plugged the bastard right between the eyes, I did, Auntie said. Too late to save Gunter, though. She paused. In the end, I couldn't bear to have the horrid creature on display upstairs. But neither can I get rid of him. He is my last contact with my darling Gunter. They are one. The creature was repulsively fascinating. He had a long snout, hooded eyes, and a wide head jammed onto his body, which widened out around his middle and tapered down to a long tail. Becky squatted down near the huge reptile's head. Its open maw was full of vicious-looking teeth. His eyes looked alive. He was hungry. He was angry. He wanted revenge. Arg! Becky jumped up and hid her face in Aunt Bess's skirt. What on earth's got into you, child? He's alive. He wants to eat me. Her aunt wrapped her in a warm embrace and gave a laugh. You silly goose. He is quite dead, I assure you. Come on, time for cordial and cake. Beck could hear her aunt's deep laughter and booming voice echoing up from the past. A shiver of apprehensive excitement tingled her spine. Is the beast still down there? She turned to her left. Beck sucked air, felt her bladder contract. Falstaff stood in the doorway, watching her. He raised his eyebrows in benign inquiry. She ignored him. The cellar door opened easily this time. She flicked on the light. A single bare bulb dangling from the cobwebbed ceiling struggled to throw off the gloom. It moved in the slight breeze, creating weird, moving shadows. Musty air spiraled up to her, redolent with memories. The rough, strong feel of Aunt Bess's hand, the smell of earthy vegetables, the sharpness of pickling vinegar, and the sight of that amazing creature, so dangerous, so dead. With a dry mouth, Beck ducked her head and thudded down the dusty, wooden stairs. The glass case was empty. The lid hung to one side. The outline of the creature was clear in the dust, as though he had only recently vacated his glass coffin. Where had he gone? Beck's nostrils flared, assailed by a fetid, swampy miasma. She searched the shadows, half expecting to find the reptile hiding in their depths. Idiot, she mocked herself. A noise rustled behind her. She swung to face the stairs. A shadow stepped forward. Jesus, Falstaff. She clenched her hands and spoke through her teeth. You nearly gave me a heart attack. I am sorry I startled you. Falstaff's oily obsequiousness belied the glint in his dark orbs. He gave a snort, showed his teeth. Beck stared into the reptilian black of his expressionless, hooded eyes. Her pupils dilated. She found herself unable to move, unable to think. He stepped closer, brought up his hand. Cool leather caressed her face. The cobwebbed light flickered, giving his movements a jerky, surreal effect. She smelled the earthy, overpowering maleness of him. Her senses reeled. Time held its breath. "What you want?" Beck forced the words from her constricted throat. "Just you," he grunted. "My Becky." She moved her head from side to side. "No, you've always known. You, the last remnant of Bess," Falstaff hissed. He lifted his other hand, placed it at the base of her throat, where her carotid pounded irregularly. His grip tightened. Goose flesh prickled Beck's spine. Her heart fluttered in its bony cage. She couldn't withdraw her gaze, couldn't move. He brought ice-cold lips down. His fetid breath entered her lungs. The flickering light snapped off ambition. "Arms up," the man said. A smile touched my lips, and I did as I was told. I knew that I'd fucked up. There was no denying it. This meeting was a formality, not a death sentence. I lifted my arms lightly above my head. My suit coat hung along my shoulders like torn-back sails. The man patted me down, unholstered my gun, and tucked it along the back of his waistband, and I looked at him with a questioning glance. The nerve of this one, I thought, but remained silent, smelling the wafting cigar smoke pouring out of Father's office. "You'll get it back when business is concluded. This your only piece?" he asked, sizing me up. I nodded and tucked in my shirt along the waist again, shimmied my pants into a better position. The man stood aside, gesturing for me to enter. My hand wrapped around the brass doorknob, and the thick wood creaked inward. And all at once, the smell of Father's cigars hit me harder than a ton of bricks. My eyes watered. Making my way inside through the haze reminded me of the night we went down to the docks to pitch the body of Lenny Chesnetter over into the dark water. "Not me," Lenny's voice echoed in my mind. "I didn't do nothin'. I swear it." "Nothin', I tell ya. The gunshot always sounds louder when it isn't you pulling the trigger." I entered the lavish office, my father sitting behind his desk like an old king at his throne. And to the chair along the right of the desk, my brother, turning his head to look at me. Even for all the years since the day of his automobile accident, I can never get used to the sight of that scar. A jagged line running along the left temple toward the middle of the cheek. "Have a seat," Father said. I listened to my shoes clacking across the hardwood, listening to the sounds of the door shutting behind me, but didn't have to look back to know that the man outside had done it. Other scents were mingling in the air. Father's cologne, as well as my brothers. One of the housekeepers had set up a bouquet in this dark room, as if it had seemed to mask the constantly wafting cigar smoke drifting up toward the ceiling. It didn't. I found the open chair to my father's right diagonal from his spot behind the desk, and took the wide way around, pulling the chair back so that the three of us now sat almost in a perfect triangle. I did this because whatever bad water had been spilled between my brother and me, I wasn't in a fighting mood. Maybe it was the Irish in me, some instinctual thing to wanna fuck strange women and fight all the goddamn time. My brother scoffed at this, gusting his air, and flapped his coat back to the center of his torso, over the velvet blue vest beneath. A single gold chain clipped to one of the buttonholes, the same pocket watch I gave him for Christmas 2 winters ago. I sat with ease and crossed my right leg over the other. "Let's get down to it, boys," Father said. "Which one of you did it?" There was silence for a moment. My brother and I exchanged a glance, not saying a word. "All right, if that's how you want to do it," he said, pulling back one of the desk drawers and withdrawing a Colt 1911 .45 semi-automatic pistol. He thumbed back the hammer and pointed at me. "Which one of you sons of bitches killed Jimmy Booker?" "Oh, you think I fucking did it, do ya?" I asked with a sneer. "Go on then, shoot me, get it over with," I said, resting my hands along the armrests. In truth, I didn't give a shit one way or the other. I looked over at my brother, trying to read his expression, but he sat there with a calm that I'd only ever seen a few times before. For once, I was the loose cannon here. For once, I was the one losing my mouth, when what I needed to do was shut the fuck up. "Why don't you point the gun there?" I said, pointing at my brother. He's always the one stirring up problems in this family. Put one right between his fucking eyes and let's get this thing over with. The sound of the gunshot was deafening. I flinched at the recoil and, to my amazement, realized that I'd still been alive. My eyes widened as a smile crept onto my face. I looked at Father. The gun had been pointed upward, and the muzzle drifted a thin line of smoke from the barrel up to the ceiling, where it mixed with the wafting cigar smoke. "Are you fucking crazy?" I asked, sitting forward. My foot dropped to the hardwood floor with a thud. "You know how many coppers walk these streets?" I asked, squinting at him. "I own the cops," Father said with a smile, and set the gun down atop the desk there, where it sat pointing between both of us, and not at one of us in particular. Father picked up his cigar and gently rounded the ash from the lit end, brought it to his lips where he bit down lightly, perching it along the corner of his teeth. "I'm gonna ask you both again. Which one of you did it?" he asked, drawing on the chewed bit of his cigar. With a wash of gray smoke drifting down from his parted lips. His wrinkled eyes studied us one by one. "Does it matter?" my brother chimed in. "That guy was a crook. Bookie or not, he's been stealing from us for years." "Not us," he said. "From me. And I know that he's been doing it. But what both of you don't know is that Jimmy Booker has been fixing bets for the better part of the last 2 decades. It was only a matter of time before we took the hammers to his kneecaps. But I would have let him live. You smug prick." Father leaned forward and stared at brother. "Scraps. That's what he took from me. Scraps. Like a dog. And one of you 2 numbskulls whacked him before I could set him down and get the truth out of him good and proper." Father sat back. "Besides, nobody gets snuffed out in this town without my saying so. Not even my dumb fuck, petulant rat children, prancing around like they're doing the Lord's work." "Is that what you thought you were doing? The Lord's work?" He slammed his fist down along the top of the wooden desk, killing a man in broad daylight. 2 days before the race of the fucking century. He stood quickly, the chair behind him falling back as he towered over the desk in front of us. "Do you 2 idiots have any idea how much fucking money I was going to make off of that race?" "55 large," I said. I knew I'd seen the books. "How much money did you take him for, anyway?" Father asked, pressing his knuckles down along the top of the desk. "How much money did you recover from Jimmy's safe?" "All of it," I said. "How much?" he asked again. His pupils were so large that you couldn't see the blues there anymore. Only the blackened coals for eyes where color had once been. "We're wasting time," my brother said absently. He had begun running his fingers along the scar across the left temple beside his eye. He did this, of course, an old gambling tell of his, when he bluffed. "We had another bookie lined up, South Side, Giovanni's man." My father was stunned into silence. He turned and picked up his expensive leather chair and set it upright once more, collapsing into it. "Let me get this straight. You killed my man so that you could use the Italians. Do you think because we have some truce with those Goombas, you can take out one of our own and fix bets with another organization? Looks like you boys are trying to run this family." Father rubbed his eyes, his cigar still perched in his teeth along the corner of his mouth. He breathed in deep, the cigar cherry lighting up the inside of his palm, and he pulled it from his lips, curling an index finger around it, wet and gnarled. His hand perched along the armrest, a thick line of smoke wafting from the end of the half-chewed cigar. "You boys will be the death of me," he said with his eyes closed. He turned to look first at my brother and then at me. "What gave you smartasses the bright idea to fix bets with the Italians. My brother glanced at me, and then back to Father. Because it's our time to move on their territory. The Italians are weak. They lost 3 good men to bank robberies, another 2 to the bombing last month. My father's eyes glinted. Between the 3 of us, none of us saying the thing there beneath the surface. That father had been orchestrating the bombings. There had been dozens in the months past. He'd been killing off the Italians from whatever shadows that he'd been operating in, beneath the guise of a truce all this time. The bombs that had been planted, the coppers tipped off about the bank robberies, was only a fraction of the work that had been done. Explosives were planted in engine rooms, aboard steamers, docked in Boston Harbor. Prized fighters dying suddenly from arsenic. There was a level of depravity not spoken of within this room, and between the 3 of us, nobody had said a word. "Why, Jimmy?" Father asked. "Why in all of this did you take out my very own fucking bookie?" I sat forward, an elbow cocked behind me along the armrest. Because Jimmy wasn't who you thought he was. I stared across the desk. My brother shifted beside me. Jimmy wasn't just fixing bets for you. He was fixing them for the Italians at the same time. He might have been taking crumbs from you over the years, but he's been raking it in hand over fist with the Italians for a decade or more. Jimmy is a distant cousin to the Giovanni Syndicate, married to one of our very own. "How do you know all this?" Father asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're not the only one who bribes cops," Brother said. There was laughter then. Father sat back against the leather chair and stared for a time at the ceiling, running his thick fingers through his thinning red hair. Word on the street is Jimmy's been letting bits and pieces of information slip past our lines for years. How do you think the Italians were able to take the South Side so quickly? Father, puzzled by this, shook his head and sat up once more. He centered himself behind the desk and laced his fingers. He seemed to know without knowing. "What do you suppose we do about all of this?" he asked, looking at me. I looked at my brother, who finally smiled. "We know the name of their horse," Brother said. "Consider it a parting gift from Jimmy." The next day had been one of the fairer ones of the season, almost pleasant. The sun was shining brilliantly overhead. I squinted through my tinted glasses, my cap tucked low over the eyes. I stood in the open air, smelling the vibrant scents of the women in attendance all around, their floral dresses puffed beneath the small of their waists like delicate flowers, concealing something even sweeter there beneath. My eyes moved across the sea of faces there, the onlookers waiting for the next race to begin, and with the gunshot that rang out, a few around were startled. But the next round of horses were padding down the track. Our horse wasn't among them, but was the next to follow. So I had little interest in this race, except for the equestrian appeal of horses galloping along their curved track, with each of their jockeys whipping their hindquarters in feverish gait. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. The leader among them, a tan beauty with a red-jacketed jockey standing above and hunched over the bobbing head of the horse that he rode. They crossed the finish line, the crowd erupting into feverish applause. "Ours is next," my brother said beside me. All was taken care of. I needn't bother with going over the morning's events, as I'd known well into the mid-afternoon what had transpired. Giovanni now lay along a cold slab downtown, the mortician sifting through the gunshot wounds that had been inflicted by the Tommy guns that took out their entire entourage as they approached their prize-winning horse, named Winn-Dixie. Our man inside had seen to poisoning Winn-Dixie with enough tranquilizers to kill a horse, to pun, but we'd be there to watch it as it happened. The horses had left the track, their riders collecting their wreaths of flowers before padding along the high walls to adoring and cheering fans. "You're certain it's been taken care of?" I asked, looking at him, my eyes trailing over the scar along the side of his face. "It's done," he said, without looking at me, feeling my eyes running along the course of that jagged line. I focused forward once more. "Father will be pleased," I said. There wasn't anything else to say. This was the first in many events moving forward. The decision that we were consciously making in a coup to take out our flesh and blood and run the organization the way that we saw fit. The world was moving right along beyond the cozy place that Father had built and remained. This was the world of the steam invention, industrialization, changing political landscapes, and even grander concepts that eluded Father. It seemed that in just an evening's pass, the world had left him there, a fossil amongst the living, and that no world would welcome his old ideals and aging perspective. I glanced at my brother now, not knowing how long he'd been staring at me. Both of us knew. "When this is all over, you'll take the north, and I'll take the south side," he said. I focused my attention on the track before us and nodded. I would take over my father's estate, and my brother would take control of the Italians. Boston was ours for the taking. There was a long pause between us, waiting for the next race to begin. A stir of excitement amongst the onlookers. And then the gunshot came. The gates opened. Our horse, Lil Red 1, roared past the others, but at the third gate, Winn-Dixie trotted forward in hopefulness, keeping a fair speed at first before arching its head backward and falling onto the ground with its back legs splayed as it rolled to its side, knocking its rider from its back. Everyone jumped to their feet and stood watching the downed rider, Winn-Dixie, writhing in pain, kicking its legs beneath it as it lay upon its side, bobbed its head as it scraped gently along the ground there. Everyone around murmuring with feverish anxiety. Winn-Dixie, panting, kicked its feet a few more times, stopped, heaved, and let out the last of its breath. Lil Red 1 crossed the finish line in first place, without the other riders knowing what had happened. I glanced at my brother. The crook of a small smile touched his lips. I looked back to Winn-Dixie, forgetting all about our own prized horse winning the race, and stared with wide eyes in horror at the fallen stud with his rider knelt beside it. One small hand rested along the rib cage of the dead animal. "That settles it," Brother said. He turned to look at me, and I to him, finally, forcing my eyes from Winn-Dixie. "Pleasure doing business with you," he said, extending a hand. I shook it, feeling the embrace of my brother there amongst a crowded bandstand of race enthusiasts. For a moment, I felt the warmth of his hand, a subtle reminder of the man that he was, a handshake with someone that I loved, and then felt the cold and calculated business transaction that had just concluded. "Till we see each other again," I said. We parted there. He took his leave and mingled with the crowd beyond, making his way down the steps, rounded the corner, and was gone. That was the last time that I'd spoken to my brother aloud. Not long after the events of that day, my father had been fatally stabbed to death late one evening. Of course, this was part of the plan all along, though I had never been the one holding the knife. It was my brother, releasing us unto the splinters of this syndicate. It wasn't long before the fires started, as his men had been ordered to take out the Italians in force. The gunshots, for a time, had been frequent and unrelenting, often in broad daylight, but skirmishes clamored through the nights in those early days. Only rumors of these prominent Italian family members slain in cold blood, or that of the houses that had been burned in the early morning hours while they slept, cozied in their beds. My brother is always the benefactor, or presumed to have been. As I sat in Father's study, swirling a brandy, I'd not had the slightest care. My brother, unbeknownst to him, had been working for me all along, doing the dirty work with blood-stained hands, as the plans that I'd set into motion had finally come to pass. "Cheers," I said, raising a toast. Confessions of the Wicked. Trigger warning. This story contains mentions of suicide, murder, SA, and drug abuse to whomever it may concern in the future. I must confess, Lisa clutched the letter tightly in her trembling hands, her heart racing as she tried to process the words before her. Each sentence felt like a distant echo, her mind struggling to comprehend the reality they presented. The ink on the paper blurred into a haze as she stared at it as if it were a passage from a dramatic novel rather than a message meant for her. One shaky hand dropped to the desk, the wooden surface cool against her palm, while the other instinctively covered her mouth in a futile attempt to stifle a gasp. A powerful wave of dread surged through her, leaving her muscles taut and aching with anxiety. Feeling an urgent need to escape the suffocating atmosphere, she pivoted on her toes, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, and made a fast beeline for the door, desperate to put distance between herself and the shocking revelation contained in that letter. Her mind raced wildly, grappling with the cruel reality of working in the very prison where her brother had been a devoted inmate for the last 10 years. The stark, cold walls echoed with memories of their shared laughter, now replaced by a haunting sense of despair. Every day, she poured herself into her work, driven to the brink of insanity as she navigated the complex legal system, desperately seeking a way to free him. Yet, in the quiet moments, a dark shadow loomed over her thoughts, the chilling possibility that all her efforts might still fall short in saving him from the fate the letter she held had predicted. She remembered the moment she first heard about her brother's arrest in South Korea. A wave of despair crashing over her. Confusion and heartbreak gripped her as she tried to fathom why he had been taken from her. In those early days, she had poured herself into studying the laws of both Korea and the United States, desperate to understand the gravity of the 24 murder charges and 2 counts of attempted murder he faced. Late nights spent poring over legal texts had become her refuge, each page turning fueled by an unwavering determination to bring him back and piece together the chaos that had upended their lives. The murders occurred in the United States, which ultimately led Lisa's family to seek refuge in South Korea. They were fleeing the shadows cast by a chilling truth. Richard was a serial killer. Disturbingly, Lisa's parents were aware of Richard's dark nature long before the FBI uncovered his gruesome activities. He had confided in them, revealing his violent tendencies and chilling declaration that he would continue his spree regardless of the consequences, even if apprehended. Richard's descent into darkness began at a young age. When he was just 17, he was discovered covered in blood at a crime scene, a scene that would mark his 3rd murder. This incident forced him to come clean about his heinous actions. Under pressure from law enforcement, Richard detailed each horrifying crime he committed, recounting events with a disturbing calmness, as if sharing mundane stories instead of the tragedies he inflicted. For Lisa's family, the awareness of his twisted mind and the violent past they were escaping only deepened the turmoil they felt in their new home. Their parents seriously thought about turning him in to the police, but then they saw Lisa. How could they abandon their youngest? Their son had taken lives. It's infuriating to think they were so desperate to protect him that they convinced themselves he could get away with it, claiming self-defense. And if that failed, they had the audacity to believe he could plead insanity. It's maddening. They were determined not to let their family suffer the consequences of his monstrous actions. They had fought hard for their so-called American dream, and now they were willing to ignore the reality of murder just to keep it intact. I've committed some really questionable acts that I have come to wholeheartedly regret. Some may ask why I even did such a thing. The answer will always be that I do not know myself. You can call it an insatiable urge. Lisa stood before her brother's cell, her heart pounding in her chest as she fought to steady her breath. Each inhalation came in shaky increments, a desperate attempt to keep her presence unnoticed in the cold, dimly lit hallway. She searched for some sort of implication to give truth to that letter. All that was in the cell were her brother's two very active cellmates. They slept serenely, coddled up like children against the wall of their respective bunks. As she tightly gripped the cold metal bar of the cell, an electrifying tension filled the air, causing the inmates to stir in panic. It was as if a primal instinct had been awakened within them, leading them to believe they were suddenly thrust into a perilous struggle for survival. Much like the brutal realities one often faces in the dark corners of the slums. The brawny ginger had his eyes wide and red with irritation. He almost flew from his frame from the banging that Lisa's small palm had brought to life with a touch. The other, smaller but still muscular, had softly turned himself over, almost unbothered by the verbal intrusion caused by the one female CO showing up at their block in the dead of night. There was only a lustful glare there. She sighed and glared at them, her stare demanding to see the last person in the shadows. She hoped from the bottom of her heart that her brother would creep up from behind the twin bunks. A silence made static pass through her ears, and her brother didn't emerge. Instead, that small inmate crept from his laid-down position and mirrored Lisa at the entrance to the cell. He breathed hard with a tangy output, showering Lisa's face with disgust. She scoffed as she pressed on her heels, steadily taking a step back. To Lisa, the inmate in front of her looked like a starved beast. She often saw the man in front of her teaching other inmates how to cope with their new life in prison. As an inmate himself, he should not have had the right to do so, but his compassion and leadership led people to look up to him. He was honestly the sweetest man that she could claim she met in prison. Even her brother had more spine than muscle. One day, Lisa decided to ask him why he was still in prison. He explained that same night that he received a life sentence after being caught. He admitted that when he was free, he kidnapped and tortured an uncomfortable amount of transient women. He said something along the lines of, "God has no respect for harlots." Maybe he was insane, but he claimed he was a respectful man of the Lord. In the state he stood in now, he was the pure antonym of the nice guy persona he usually shows. His eyes rested half-lidded and bloodshot. His gaze lingered on parts of her body with an unsettling desire. Although his hands gripped hard on the bars on either side of her face, he looked ready to topple over with a single misstep. He mumbled to say something, but she was only able to understand the slurring of an accused drunk. Realizing her presence made no difference to anyone in the vicinity. She sucked in as much as she could and ran off with that breath held within her chest, the letter Lt as if it was coming true. I want to see the chaos from the front seat. Such a massacre has been my dream since becoming a person of power. I can do it, so why not? For 25 years, I have gotten away with enough wrongdoings to make the boy I'm killing tonight look like a saint. He's been a serial killer since childhood, but he's merciful in the sense he ends their suffering. However, Lisa rushed through the halls with her hands clasped around her keys. She glided past cell after cell with nothing standing out to her until she heard a muffled bang come from the prison's watchtower, cantered in the lunch area on the first floor. She crept up to the door and reached for the knob. A sharp pain ran through the muscles in her wrist. Her eyes closed for the moment of impact before she opened them to see her brother in nothing but his worn-out, once white, prison boxers. His eyes were wide and the same shaded red as the other inmate she had seen up close. His entire face was morphed into fear itself. Lisa had never seen him look like this. Richard fell on top of her, breathing as if he just escaped a nasty waterboarding session. Except he wasn't wet. He was covered in oil. She froze in place, a fathomable confusion filling her expression. The room grew more tense as Richard only stared for a moment and opened his mouth, inhaling and howling. He then pushed off Lisa's chest and sprinted away, never turning to look back. His destination seemed unclear. It just looked like he wanted to get as far away as possible. At first, she found the cowardice retreat understandable, because it made sense. The only time a prisoner would get to enter the watchtower was if they were in trouble and about to receive some sort of punishment. My morals have morphed over the years. I'm not an old man going senile. I have come to embrace the cruelty I wish to inhabit, although I still recognize that this is wrong. I want to watch the hell burn from its core. I understand that this is an unforgivable madness. The ending of the letter resurfaced in her brain, as the warden walked out from the shadows of the tower. He smiled widely, towering over her in uniform pants and his uniform boots. He lifted his hand with his gun pointed to his head. She stared in horror as her brother's howling continued like a dog whistle. Before she could catch up with herself, the gun was fired and a bullet went straight through the warden's skull. So I write this letter to let you know that I will be taking my own life after have fun. And I take the boy's. His body fell limp, and the alarms finally took away her silence. She stared at the body, and the next 4 hours of her life passed in a blur. She was taken into emergency care and treated for substance abuse, just like everyone else in the prison. Even though she had accidentally saved her brother's life that night, it was already too many deaths, too late. The world had already been spoon-fed the confession of the wicked. Venus, buried. The girl in the graveyard is your best friend, so you take her home. The night is a bruise between you, a blotch of rogue in the passenger window, the color of fruit left out to fester. The body pries at her seatbelt, a finger, then 2. The radio echoes static. The body shuffles in her seat. You study the face, the similar slice of jaw, the nose humped from where a baseball had hit her at 12, just slightly off-center. The skin, like a rain-licked plastic bag, the stink of musk and sulfur. You want to look away, but you cannot. She's so beautiful, even like this. Your headlights rake warbled slits through the dirt road, a yellow like jaundice. Your hands are stiff from the cold, your lips cracked. The girl beside you is dead, and you are bringing her home. 4 days ago, you'd stepped into a hardware store and emerged with a shovel sturdy enough to lift a life on. 4 days you'd spent digging dirt in your own backyard yard until loam muddied under your fingernails and erratic holes split garden beds like the mouths of greedy beasts, until you could sift through soil with your eyes closed, with a hand bound. 4 nights you had laid in your bed, staring at the pockmarked ceiling, wondering what it felt like to burn alive. Now, the shovel beats dull against the skin of your trunk, your hands gripping the steering wheel like a throat you're trying to silence. The body turns, dawn bleaching the salmon gray of her skin. The left eye slips from its socket, and she pushes it back in with the heel of her hand. She smiles, head lolling like a marionette's. "Sorry, baby." Her voice comes out strained. "I wasn't expecting company. I'm sure you understand." In a sickle of citrus moonlight, Adeline Marcus smiles up at you with shell-pale gums. Adeline Marcus died on the 31st of October and was buried a week later, the date on her gravestone a month shy of her 18th birthday. In the court, the boys would claim it was an accident, that they didn't know she was inside. For better or worse, you believe them. The fingers striking out matchboxes, the beer cans constellating the sidewalk. A prank gone too far, the wrong place, the wrong time. It doesn't have to be on purpose. She didn't have to be home. The coroner ruled it suffocation. But all you can imagine is flame like a stiff palm, striking over and over. Adeline had crawled from the mouth of the home on her hands and knees. She was dead by the time she reached the pavement, her Sunday dress singed up to her knees. The dress you knew well enough. Either way, the boys were left with 25 to life, and the Marcas were left with a dead daughter, a ring of ash like chalk on the pavement. You were left with a misplaced guilt, like hunger, a guilt like an Ouroboros, choking on the tail, swallowing the head, eating yourself alive and being unable to stop, even as it consumes you. Because this wasn't the sort of thing that happened to good people. You watch water curl down your shower drain, carrying with it mortuary makeup, kaleidoscopic insects, and jasmine bubbles. Strings of dirt stretched out like sinew. The body's head rests on her knees, vertebrae needling through her back like a line of molars. The electric lights wash her green, dark veins rooted under brittle skin. She turns her face to the shower head and picks at the powdery sediment under her fingernails. The shower floor is a mess of grit. And you think of a child scooping up the sand. You turn the heat up until it scalds and scrub mildew from the base of the shower door. You think, if you can only get everything clean, everything will be all right. She turns her head and looks at you through eyes obscured by glass paneling. She says, "It's not as bad as all that." I don't even think I felt a thing, but she says it through lips the color of spoiled plums, so the sentiment doesn't ring true. You lift threadbare towels from the bottoms of your linen closet. You walk 3 times around your block and return to a corpse sat on your sofa like she has nowhere better to be. There are ants in your sugar bowl. You try to remove them, lift their crystal-knotted bodies on the prong of a fork, but they slip between the gaps, and you are left with a mess bigger than when you started. Tea-brown sludge bleeding from thoraxes and the stink of vinegar. There's a dead girl on your sofa, but let's focus on the ants in your sugar bowl. The way they thread through cysts of white like veins on a leaf, like the capillaries that run through the skin of your face. You make tea anyway. You add too much milk and sit cross-legged in front of the body. She stares at you. You stare back. The two of you drink, and ribbons of watery milk pour clean out her trachea, the gaping hole in her chest. But she doesn't stop drinking until you do. "You're not looking at me," she says. "Not really." "Yes, I am. You twist your hands in the shag carpet. Aren't I now? No, she says. You're not. You leave your teacup on the floor, saucer an iris of yellow, and go upstairs. You take 2 cigarettes from the carton squashed on your father's desk, and then think better of it. Press down with your heel until tobacco dissipates into the tawny carpet. You change your bed sheets twice. Eggshell white. No, gray with peonies. You make a second cup of tea. When you get back to the room, the body is still there. You are looking at her. You are not looking at her. Do I disgust you? She says. No. She shakes her head. Dark hair plastered to her shoulders like reeds. No more than I always did. You need to sleep. You say, baby. She tilts her head to one side. Sleeping is all I've ever done. The last time you saw Adeline Marcus alive was in the back of a stranger's car, parked on a stranger's street, with the taste of a stranger's tequila fresh between your lips. You were never too built for parties, so the outcome was a pair of girls who looked like they were playing dress-up. Blousy dresses with sleeves like a nun's. Thrift store necklaces noosing your necks. Shoplifted lipstick, which she hid beneath her mattress. More wax than pigment. But in the citrus peel of street lights, in the low trill of distant music, the two of you looked beautiful. She had her legs curled under her and was sitting sideways in the back seat, her hand resting on your knee, and the other palmed against the window, a song on her lips that you couldn't quite place. You were too close, but it was night, and everyone was inside and drunk. And sometimes we all need to feel closer than we should be, to lose ourselves a little. The song melted on her lips, swallowed into the limp press of salvia and booze. And you said something like, I think I should go home now. And she said something like, have another drink. And so you did. You let her pour the liquor into the flimsy mouths of red plastic cups and watched her swallow. She said, you're so pretty. And you said, I think you should stop. And she said, just let me say that one thing. And you wanted to say, stop fucking looking at me like that. And you wanted to say, I want to crawl inside you and make a life for myself in the city of your mind. And you wanted to say, let's just be quiet. Let's just not talk. Let's just not ruin a good thing by telling the truth. Instead, you pushed open the passenger door, stumbled out onto the skin of vein blue sidewalk. I'm going home now. The body lays with her back to your bed, hands worming in the floral sheets, chestnut hair spilling across her throat, past the ballpoint pen-marred bedposts, over the gray skin of her forehead. You are thinking about the silken mouth of a coffin. You are thinking of how she looked when you pulled her from the rose mouth of heaven. The radiator hums. A lace curtain bellies your open window. She rolls over onto her side, slots her hands together like pieces of a decaying jigsaw puzzle. You still can't even look at me. Her mouth moves too slowly, words like chewing gum. Why am I here, Bet? What's it for? There are pink crescent moons on the bed of your palms from the bite of your nails. She pulls her knees to her chest, and a bone cracks. She pulls her knees to her chest, and a molar tumbles from between her keyhole lips. You can only love me when I'm not here. You can only love me when there's nothing left to love. You press your cheek to the cool spread of linen beside her. You listen to the steady beat of your heart, the way you can feel it in your fingertips. Entirely singular. Don't tell anyone. You say, did you want it to die with me, Beta? She shifts, and her hair falls against the nape of your neck. Were you glad it was silenced? Don't tell anyone. You say again. She sighs, lays herself back down, so you're face to face. Crooked nose, eye pulling from its socket. The onset of gray-green decay wreathing her jaw. The smell of soil and rot and cicada-heavy nighttime. Who could I tell? She brushes your hand. I'm not really here. And suddenly, you can imagine it is your fists splitting beer cans in two, like overripe fruit. It is your fingers on the matchbox, your fingers striking out. But you both know the house would still be on fire. And you both know you'd leave alone. You take her hand. You put your face in the crook of her neck and beg forgiveness from a ghost. Goodbye, Mary. It's funny how I spent my whole life forming relationships, working, trying to be a good person, and building something out of nothing to feel safe, secure, and happy. It's even funnier how it all went away in a matter of few days. A few days that rocked my world, ruined all my foundations, and forced me to take steps I would never imagine to have to take. My black boots slightly sink in the mud, and I swear at myself that I chose this specific day for such an unimportant matter. Didn't the weather predictions say it will rain all night? Maybe. I haven't paid much attention to things so trivial. I fix my black coat, seeing it has lifted slightly in the corner, and feel a cold breeze wash over my bare legs. I should have worn leggings, or at least tights, but I couldn't find any black ones. And surely I should not be wearing any other color to the funeral. It's hardly a funeral, though. I am the only person here, watching the freshly dug ground and the sun reflecting stone gravestone. Marianne Robinson, the grave says. Her date of birth and death are also engraved, but no other message, like others have. There are no loving daughter, or she left us too soon, or some cheesy poem quote about inevitable death and the horror of young people dying. She was only 26 years old. It definitely is too young to die. She's had her whole life ahead of her. And now, she's buried on some old, almost abandoned cemetery where no one will visit her, bring fresh flowers, or tend to her grave. Marianne was a fearful person. She was too scared to stand up to her toxic manager at work and let them bully her. She was in a relationship with a man she didn't love because being on her own terrified her. She never voiced her feelings, fought for what she believed, or chased her dreams. She was living an anxious life and never tried to change it. I sit down at the bench just a couple of steps away from the grave, and I keep looking at the stone as if it is going to speak to me, give me some words of comfort or reassurance. But nothing comes my way except the cold wind, a not very warm sun flashing my eyes. I take a deep breath and put my hands on my knees. You had it coming, I almost whisper, not wanting for my words to be stolen by the wind and scattered across the land. You very damn well had it coming, and you know it. Saying it doesn't ease my hurt. If anything, it makes me more angry. Because it is true. You should have quit it when you had a chance. It is too late now, I guess. I take another deep breath, trying to calm down my emotions. The sun hides behind the miserable clouds, and the windy breeze feels even colder now. My whole body shivers in response, and muscles tense up. A mostly cloudy and cold day is a perfect setting for funeral. Makes it easier to leave the graves behind and dive into the warmth of a car or a house. But not me. I can't leave just yet. Not until I finish what I started. Marianne lived in a belief that if she consciously stayed out of trouble and allowed people to walk all over her, she would be at peace. It worked for a while. The problems didn't seem like problems back then. She forgave everyone who hurt her, never questioned anyone's actions or motives, agreed to everything she was thrown at. It was the ultimate goal, wasn't it? Until it stopped working. The trouble came looking for her, and she couldn't keep it away, regardless of how hard she tried. That was the first time she fought back, stood her ground, and followed her beliefs. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. And now, she's stuck in this endless loop of bad decisions she can never make right. And it still hurts me to know that Marianne will never be fully free. I glance at my purse that I placed next to me on the bench and swallow hard, feeling my anxiety rise once again. It has to be done. I remind myself, hoping it will bring me some courage. It doesn't, but it was worth a try. It has been a while since that information has been dropped on me, and the steps I need to take been explained. I have had enough time to process and digest everything. Yet I'm still worried. It is an incredibly serious situation, and I cannot predict how this will affect me in the future. Yet I have no choice. The worst thing has already happened. Now, I just have to keep covering my tracks to stay hidden, stay a shadow that no one can catch. And killing Marianne Robinson was the first step. I reach for my bag, take out her passport, and a small, handheld shovel. The top corner of the passport is already snipped off, as per the instructions from the government received when I registered Mary's death. The next steps seem easy to make, but yet feel the hardest. They feel final, as if killing someone is not final enough. Reluctantly, I open the passport and look at the photo. I used to look so mediocre back then, with my uneven fringe, refusal to wear any makeup, official and modest clothes. I didn't even smile for that picture. Apparently, it was the rules. I then glance at the name written next to the photo, and I take another deep breath. My passport is still valid for another 2 years. Or it would be, hadn't I cut off the corner. But it doesn't matter. I am dead. Officially, I had to die. The work I will be doing is dangerous, risky, and very important. All the ties to my previous life had to be cut, and that's why Marianne had to die. For Cassie to be born. I approach the grave and kneel on the grass. With a pounding heart, I dig a foot-deep hole into the fresh ground and gently place the passport there. After filling the hole back up, I stand up and keep staring at my grave. "Goodbye, Mary," I whisper, with a single tear rolling down my cheek. I don't wipe it. I allow it to slowly drop on the ground. Lessons from my shadow dreams. It was storming. The sky a slab of slate with swollen thunderclouds crowding its expanse, each nudging for room. A wicked, unrelenting wind whipped chestnut hair into my eyes and mouth. Pulling it out of my face, I looked at the desolation surrounding me. Empty air met me in every direction. I don't know where I am, I realize, as the panic starts to set in, and my breathing turns shallow and rapid. On my hands and knees, kneeling on what appears to be sand made from stardust, I take a calming breath and rise until I'm standing. What is this place? Where am I? The last thing I remember is going to bed, my lids shutting to the lavender of my walls as I slowly drifted off to sleep. Not knowing what else to do, I started walking, and that's when the voices began and the shadows formed. At first, it was small. It was subtle. A whisper here, a mutter there, voices that got louder as I trudged on. I struggled against the wind, hugging my arms to myself, each hand gripping an elbow until my knuckles turned white as chalk. As I walked, the black, star-lit sand at my feet began to rise with the wind, forming shadowy figures that strode alongside me, the overlapping voices tumbling from their open mouths. I watched in morbid fascination, my feet slowing as their dark forms became recognizable, their faces slowly morphing into a colorless version of the faces I know. On my right was my mother, a horrendous, nightmare version of my mother, her blue eyes dark as coal, and her face twisted with malice. "What are you doing? Really, Midge? Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with you?" came from the cavern that was her mouth. My eyes went wide, fear and pain forming as tears that threatened to spill. "You're not good enough. Why would I want to touch you? You're not what I want," came from my left, and my head whipped to see an equally nightmarish version of my ex. At this point, my feet had slowed until I was almost at a complete stop. More and more figures from both my past and present began to form and dance around me, each hurling their own unique version of verbal awfulness. With each invisible blow, I shrunk until I was crouched on the shifting sand, hands splayed over my face to cover sight and sound. I squeezed my eyes, silently begging for it to end, for the voices and noise and all the venom of the world to stop. "Midge, breakfast?" I gasped, jolting awake to my mom's voice calling from the kitchen. As reality settled in, a sick dread pooled in my gut at the vague nightmare I'd left behind. "It was a bad dream, Midge. Just a bad dream," I mumbled to myself as I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. I tramped downstairs, the thick soles of my boots making loud thuds on each carpet-covered step. I slid into a distressed wooden chair at our equally distressed dining table that doubled as our breakfast nook. As I shoved eggs in my mouth, scrambled just how my mom knows I like it, I thought about our history exam today with rising anxiety. I was not the best at memorizing details, like dates or times, and last night Amy had another drama round with her douche of a boyfriend. My mom sat across from me, early morning sunlight streaming in from the window sink, sipping coffee from the chipped Mom of the Year mug I got her for Christmas last year, before Dad left. Before it all fell apart, we sat together in silence. She analyzed me over her mug as I finished off my butter-soaked toast. "You okay, honey? You seem stressed," she asked with a slight tilt of her head. I nibbled my toast while staring at my plate, not wanting to admit how egregiously unprepared I was for the day's exam, or the nightmare I'd endured that clung to me like static. It felt like I was seeing reality underwater, my senses warbled and muffled, making everything as impactful as an echo. My mom cleared her throat, snapping me out of my reverie. "Midge, she asked, her gaze holding concern as lines formed between her dark brows. I'm okay, just not as ready for my exam today as I'd like to be, I answered simply. The truth was, I wasn't ready at all for anything. My mom pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, a clear sign she knew I was lying. To be fair, technically, I really was worried about the exam today, but I also was still disturbed by my nightmare, which stuck to me like a dark, immovable shroud. And it being my parents' divorce anniversary didn't exactly help. As if sensing my thoughts, my mom's eyes darted to the calendar on our white linoleum fridge, absolutely covered with magnets and pamphlets or flyers. Instantly, her gaze softened when she recognized the date. Hey, it's gonna be okay, baby. I know today will be hard, but you'll be okay. Plus, your father is still coming for a family dinner this Friday, she said with a quirk of her mouth, as if that should excite me, as if that fixed everything. I simply nodded as I tried to swallow my last bite of toast, which had turned to sandpaper in my throat. Gotta go, Mom. Thanks for breakfast. Before she could answer, I quickly grabbed my backpack and was out the door. I sat in history, staring blankly at the open-ended questions in front of me. Mr. Sikowitz sat at his desk in the front of the class, hunched over papers he was likely grading for a different set of students, his red pen lightly roving and marking with steadfast eyes. I looked back down at the unanswered prompts in front of me and felt my heart start to quicken. Gods, I'm screwed. Dad would be so disappointed, I thought with increasing fear. My breathing became slightly uneven, and with the panic, my nightmare from the night before reached towards the front of my mind. This was the last thing I needed. But it seemed the more I tried to repress the images and the memory, the harder they fought back. Shadows began to gather at the edge of my vision. That same smoky, starlit sand from the dream clustering along my peripheral. I blinked hard 2 or 3 times while keeping my head down, trying to force this contorted melding out of existence through sheer denial. But to no avail. The darkness stayed. Slowly, and with threatening dread, the dregs of my nightmare creeped towards my desk until it surrounded me on every side. I briefly darted my eyes around the room, desperate to find some reaction, any recognition from my classmates of the nightmare unfolding. But I was left wanting. The line between dream and reality was paper thin, blurring further as the familiar wraith-like figures began to swirl upwards and form, then shattered entirely as my nightmare came to life. My mother was again on my right, with a mouth black as pitch and her blue eyes drained of color once more. What makes you think you can do this, Midge? Answer me, Midge. What's wrong with you? Are you fucking stupid? She hissed as her ghastly form drifted towards my ear, her teeth gnashing with each syllable. It wasn't exactly the same as the nightmare, but it was damn similar. Now my father, in his trademark suit and tie, took shape in front of me, causing me to flick my gaze upwards. Looking was a mistake. His usually coiffed hair laid limply on his head. His eyes were endless black holes, and he stood with his arms crossed, intimidating and unmovable despite his form. His slightly transparent clothes were rumpled and worn, which wasn't like him at all. And he looked at me with a face of disgust and hatred as I'd never known. At least, not from him. Grow up, Midge. What's your problem? Why can't you just get this right? He shouted, somehow slamming his not-so-solid hand on my desk, causing me to jump to my feet with a yelp, my chair making a loud crash as collateral. Ms. Sloan, can I help you with something? My head whipped over to Mr. Sikowitz, and just like that, as I met his dark brown eyes, the spell was broken. I looked around and realized that the echo of my nightmare had vanished, and all eyes were on me, as if deciding if they needed to grab the straitjacket now or later. I audibly swallowed. No, sorry, Mr. Sikowitz, I said, as I haphazardly righted my chair off the ground and sat while keeping my head and eyes firmly down, my dark hair creating a curtain on either side of my pallid face. The rest of the day passed in an anxiety-filled blur. At every turn and every corner, I looked for the shadows, waited for the starlit sand to reappear and inch along the edge of my vision, anticipating the god-awful convergence of my nightmare and reality. But it never did. I stared out the bus window on the way home, watching the rain spatter the glass in large, heavy drops. "Hi, honey," my mom hollered from the kitchen when she heard me walk through the door, her voice warm and rich over the cold I felt in my bones, like a homespun blanket. Our house was a pretty open floor plan, with the kitchen slightly sectioned off, but having two large archways on either end of its L-shaped design. I watched her through this opening for a moment, trying to reconcile the nightmare version of her I saw at school with the flesh and blood in front of me. She was currently unloading the dishwasher, and when her hello was met with silence, she turned to look at me, her arm pausing briefly as she made to put away a plate. Her face scrunched, and she immediately put the dish on the counter. "What's wrong, honey? Did something happen at school?" I tried to speak. I tried to open my mouth to tell her about all of it, but nothing would come except tears that began to blur my vision. "Oh, honey," my mom said, as she strode over to me, crossing the distance in 3 or 4 strides. Due to her unfairly long legs, I let her hug me, soaked up the feeling of being wrapped in her arms, and for a solid couple of minutes, we stood in the entryway like that. I reveled in her warmth, the sensation of her solid arms around me, and memorized every detail that made her real. Keeping contact with a hand on my shoulder, she guided me to the couch where we sat, knees angled towards each other. "Honey, what is it?" she asked. I looked at her, and at first, I could only stutter. As I struggled to form coherent words, I felt my anxiety and panic start to rise. The shadows were at the edge of my vision again, causing my breathing to turn rapid and shallow. "Honey?" my mom asked, leaning closer. I could barely hear her, barely see her over the pounding of my own heart. "Midge," my mom said, a bit louder now, giving my leg a slight shake as she placed her hand on my knee. The shadows and the darkness were beginning to take shape now. Starlit sand rolling across the ground as it crept ever closer. Tears pooled along my lids, causing my vision to blur. Suddenly, warm, soft hands enclosed my face, and my mom's face, my real mom's face, swam in front of me. "Midge," she seemed to say in almost a whisper. "Look at me, look at me," she said, increasing the pressure around my head. "You are not broken, okay? I don't know exactly what you're seeing, but it's not real, okay? I'm real. I'm here," she said, taking the limp hand from my lap and gently placing it over her heart. I felt the softness of her wool sweater under my fingertips, like touching a cloud made of silk. I focused on her eyes, blue, just like they were supposed to be. Your mom's, right here, Midge, right here. Not that ghoulish thing of nightmares, I thought to myself, as the vile shadow, puppeting as her pushed and crowded closer along my peripheral. That's it, baby. I'm right here. Breathe, honey. Breathe with me. Focus on my voice, on my face. I'm right here, she said with a squeeze of my fingers, as she had removed her hands from my head and was now holding my own in her lap, her gaze unwavering. I took a steadying breath. Just breathe, Midge. That's all you have to do. Just breathe. I counted to 10 as I inhaled, and did the same on the exhale as my mom, keeping hold of my hands, did the same. That's it, honey. Breathe. Just breathe. 10 in and 10 out. You can do this. I nodded, and as I expanded my lungs in and out, feeling my pulse start to slow, blessedly, the shadows began to ebb, receding from the edge of my vision. The grotesque, half-formed versions of my loved ones melting and fading away, bit by bit. By about the 5th or 6th of these exercises. The nightmare was all but gone, the shadows having slunk back to whatever hellish mindscape they belonged to. There she is, my mom said with relief, seeing my eyes clear and the panic gone, a slight smile playing on her lips. I crumpled, burying my head into her chest with small sobs. "Oh, honey," she let out softly, stroking the top of my head as only a mom can. "Has this happened before?" she asked gently. I lied, shaking my head slightly as I kept it tucked into the crook of her arm. Gods, her sweater felt like the softest pillow. I soaked up the comfort. "Do you know why your father left?" I whipped my head up, pushing out of her arms, taken aback by the subject change. Realizing I wasn't going to answer her, she continued, but her face took on a faraway look, as if trying to see through the smog of time to the not-so-distant past. Our family, both the men and the women, have always struggled to master themselves. We have the curse of extreme feeling, of intangible emotions strong enough to drown countries. And for some of us, that leaks into our dreams. And then, sometimes, those dreams, usually the darkest of nightmares, leak into our reality. She shifted her focus back to me and asked with a tilt of her head, "Do you understand what I'm saying, Midge?" "No, not really," I mumbled, swallowing and tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My mom leaned forward, using her thumbs to wipe away my residual tears, and took my hands in hers. "Honey, what were you feeling? What did you see?" she asked, her blue eyes piercing. I don't know," I said, avoiding her gaze. "I was sitting in class, trying to take my test, and, well, I wasn't sure of some answers. And then I was thinking about Dad, and I panicked. Then the nightmare started. But no one else could see it, just me." At this, I raised my head to look at her with wide eyes, searching for answers or preparing for a straitjacket, whichever came first. My mom pursed her lips, seeming to debate how much she should or shouldn't say. I saw the moment she decided to bear all, clear as day. "Honey, you were experiencing a moment of extreme emotion, of anxiety and fear, maybe panic. And sometimes those things can make us forget who we are, or even where we are. For the few in our family who have a very special heart, our emotions can cause our worst fears or worst anxieties to come to life. It usually takes an extreme or traumatic event. And given today's date," she trailed off, her eyes going distant again. After a moment, with a shake of her head, she returned her attention to me. She made to speak, but I stopped her before she could get a word out. "What happened with Dad?" I asked. My mom silently opened and closed her mouth, clearly struggling with what to say or how to say it. When it happened to me while I was with your father, he thought I had gone half mad. Mine was a nightmare too, a wretched one that had me crouched in the corner like a rabid animal. Once we learned of our family history and what some of us have to deal with, he decided he didn't want to stay with someone who couldn't trust her own emotions, her own feelings, whose reality and dreams tended to mix and meld until they were one and the same. My mom's voice got progressively softer as she spoke, until it was barely above a mere whisper. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I said, taking hold of her hands and squeezing her palms. "That's all right, sweetie," she responded with a grimace, tucking another strand of chocolate brown hair behind my ear. "You know why?" Her eyes twinkled mischievously. My brow scrunched as I tried to find anything good in what had so far transpired, or what I'd been told. "Because," my mom said, clearly seeing I was coming up empty, "it's not just the bad dreams our hearts can bring to life." She smiled, placing a hand upon my cheek, rubbing small circles against my skin with her thumb. "It's the good ones, too." The perfect coincidence. When Maggie first found the old postcard at the bottom of her grandmother's drawer, she thought nothing of it. It was a typical postcard, nothing spectacular. The image on the front was of a sunny beach with the words, "Greetings from Seabrook," printed in bold letters above a view of the ocean. But the back was what made Maggie freeze. Written in smudged ink, in a neat, looping script, were just 2 lines. "I'll be there at 5 p.m. Don't forget the blue umbrella. It'll be our sign." There was no date, no name, just a message. Maggie wasn't sure why, but it sent a shiver down her spine. She turned the postcard over in her hand. Her grandmother, Clara, had passed away last year, and the postcard was among some of the things Maggie was sorting through as she went through her grandmother's things. She had never seen this postcard before. Clara had never mentioned Seabrook. There were no family vacations to the beach, no secret lovers from some faraway town. There were no blue umbrellas. But the thing that unsettled Maggie the most was how familiar the writing looked. The loops, the curls, they looked exactly like her handwriting. Maggie shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. It was ridiculous. It was just a coincidence. She had to be imagining things. But still, the words echoed in her mind as she tucked the postcard into her pocket. Over the next few days, Maggie couldn't stop thinking about it. Why had her grandmother kept it? Why hadn't she ever mentioned Seabrook or the blue umbrella? Maggie, for reasons she didn't understand, decided to look into it. The next weekend, she packed her things and headed out to Seabrook. It wasn't far, just a few hours' drive. She didn't know why, but something told her she needed to see it for herself. Seabrook was a little town with the kind of charm that felt a little too quaint. A a little too perfect to be real. As Maggie drove through the small streets, she started to feel like she was in a movie. The cobblestone paths, the little cafes with flower boxes in the windows, the sea breeze. It all felt so familiar. She found a small inn to stay in, an old white house with a wraparound porch. The lady at the front desk greeted her with a warm smile, as if she had been expecting her. "First time in Seabrook?" she asked. Maggie nodded. "Yes, just for the weekend." "You'll love it here," the lady said. "The best spot is down by the beach. If you're looking for something to do, the pier's just a short walk. It's beautiful at sunset." Maggie smiled politely, but she wasn't here for the tourist attractions. She was here for something else. That evening, as the sun began to set, Maggie walked down toward the beach. The breeze was cool on her face, and the sand felt soft beneath her feet. She had no idea where she was going, but somehow she felt like the postcard was leading her, like she was following an invisible trail her grandmother had left behind, even though Clara had never told her to come. She walked along the shore, the sound of the waves crashing in the distance. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw it. A small blue umbrella, positioned right by the water, almost as if it had been waiting for her. Maggie stopped in her tracks. Her heart raced as she stared at the umbrella. It was a little worn, the fabric faded, but it was unmistakably blue, exactly like the one in the postcard. She approached slowly. There was no one else around, just the umbrella, the sound of the waves, and a growing sense of anticipation. As she reached the umbrella, she saw a bench nearby, old and weathered, its paint chipped from years of saltwater exposure. But what caught her eye next was the piece of paper resting on the bench. It was folded neatly, like a letter with a small, familiar scrawl on the front. "Maggie, open me." Her hand trembled as she unfolded the paper. It wasn't a letter, though. It was another postcard, identical to the one she had found in her grandmother's drawer. The same beach, the same Seabrook at the top. But this time, the words were different. "I'm here, just like I promised. Meet me where the ocean touches the sand. The blue umbrella will be your sign. I'm waiting." Maggie's heart skipped. This can't be happening, she thought, almost breathlessly. She glanced around, but the beach was empty. No one was here. No one had been here, and yet, somehow, she felt drawn to the spot, like it was a place where time and reality blurred. "Clara?" she whispered, almost as if speaking the name aloud would make something happen. But there was no answer, no sign of anyone nearby. She sat down on the bench, the postcard in her lap. The sun was almost fully set now, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Then, a figure appeared at the edge of the beach. Maggie's breath caught in her throat. The figure was too far away to make out clearly, but something about the silhouette seemed so familiar. The way they moved, graceful and sure-footed, as if they had walked this very spot 1,000 times. Maggie stood, unable to keep herself seated. She took a few tentative steps toward the figure, her eyes squinting, trying to make sense of the shadow. The person grew clearer as they approached, and Maggie's pulse raced in her ears. It was her grandmother, Clara, standing before her, looking younger than Maggie had ever remembered. Her skin was free of the wrinkles it had when she'd passed. Her hair, though graying when she died, was now thick and dark, cascading down her shoulders. She smiled, a soft, knowing smile that made Maggie's heart ache. "Grandma?" Maggie whispered, her voice barely audible. Clara nodded, her smile deepening. "I knew you'd find me, Maggie." "Find you?" Maggie felt tears well up in her eyes. "But how? How are you here?" Clara reached out, her hand brushing Maggie's cheek. "It's not as complicated as it seems. I needed to bring you back here." "Back home?" Maggie shook her head in disbelief. "But the postcards, they were from you?" "Not exactly," Clara said softly. "The message was always for you. But it wasn't time for you to understand until now. You were always meant to be here, Maggie, right where the ocean meets the sand." Maggie's heart pounded, her thoughts spinning. But why the blue umbrella? Why Seabrook? Clara's eyes softened, and she gave a small, bittersweet laugh. The umbrella was just a symbol, your sign. And as for Seabrook, my dear, well, all I can say is that this is your home now. The wind picked up slightly, the ocean whispering as the world around them seemed to shift again. Like a dream slowly fading, Maggie opened her mouth to ask more, but the words caught in her throat. Clara's figure started to dissolve, becoming less distinct, as if the very air was pulling her back into some distant place. "Wait!" Maggie called, but her grandmother's figure was already gone, leaving nothing behind but the blue umbrella and the sound of the waves. Maggie stood there, her hands trembling, her heart racing. The perfect coincidence, too good to be true, had just happened. Santa, the hitman, the hospice smells like antiseptic and failed dreams. A Christmas-themed air freshener dangles from the IV stand, swaying in time with my father's mechanical wheezing. It smells like cinnamon and regret. The fluorescent lights hum, drowning out the morphine's slow drip. Hi, I'm the man who never amounted to anything. The trophyless disappointment. If life is a race, I'm the guy who tripped in the first 10 feet and never got back up. 35 years old, still renting, and my most significant contribution to society is a viral video of me accidentally setting fire to a microwave burrito. That's me, proud owner of a pile of unwashed dishes and a credit score so low it could run for public office. I sit slouched in this corner, watching my dad suck on life like it's a particularly stubborn milkshake. He's enormous. Round face, round belly, round everything. A human snowman, melted into a hospice bed. The kind of guy who built his whole life on being likable. For 30 years, he played Santa Claus at the mall. Not just any Santa, mind you. He was the Santa. The one people drove 4 counties over to see. His face still pops up on Christmas cards across the Midwest. A local legend, a walking, jolly Norman Rockwell painting. And me? I'm the guy who gave him a $10 Amazon gift card for Christmas. You'd think that's why he's dying. The look he gave me when he opened it. He beckons me closer, his hand shaking like a rusty wind-up toy. Come here, kiddo. Yeah, sure, I say, dragging the chair closer. It screeches against the linoleum like its legs are fighting with the floor. What is it this time? Another story about how you single-handedly saved Christmas at the mall in '93. His laugh comes out like a wheeze caught in a blender. Then he stops, face turning deadly serious, eyes boring into mine. I've got a confession, kiddo. Something big. I lean back. Here we go again. Oh, great. Did you save Christmas again? He laughs, shakes his head. His smile, faint but still there, cracks like old plaster. No. Listen to me, kiddo. I killed people. I was a hitman. The words hit me like a sucker punch to the ribs. His eyes twinkle with something far from Christmas cheer. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Not because I believed him, but because some part of me wanted to. Like, even in death, Dad had to be bigger than life. Then the ridiculousness hit me, and I laughed. Hard. Too hard. Jesus, Dad. Did the morphine knock your last screw loose? You don't think a guy with fake snow in his eyebrows could carry out a clean kill? Do you? Dad's grin spreads like butter on burnt toast, his cheeks wobbling like he's auditioning for Jell-O's next ad campaign. I stare. Words feel stuck somewhere between my brain and my tongue, like traffic on the I-5 during rush hour. I've got a list of things I never expected to hear from my father. I love you. I'm proud of you. There's a secret trust fund hidden in the walls. But this takes the cake, and then assassinates the baker. You're messing with me, I finally manage. Is this one of those morphine fever dreams? Should I call the nurse? Blink once for yes. Dad coughs out a laugh, deep and phlegmy, shaking his head. No joke. I was good at it too. Seasonal work was the perfect cover. Everyone sees Santa as a big, harmless teddy bear. No one suspects Santa Claus of carrying a 9mm Glock. I blink. Hard. He's lost it. The man's gone off the deep end, dragged the Christmas tree, the reindeer, and the inflatable snowman with him. I had a code, he says, his voice dropping to a low rasp, like he's auditioning for The Godfather. Never moms, never kids, and no one who liked Christmas. I rub my temples. So you're telling me all those business trips to Reno weren't about fixing mall contracts? Nope. He pops the P like he's proud. They were about fixing people. Your old man was a regular Mr. Clean. And you expect me to believe this? He leans forward, a Herculean effort given his state. Remember the upstairs neighbor at our old place? The guy who played techno at 2 a.m.? I nod slowly, stomach sinking. You said he moved. I moved him. His grin widens. To a landfill. Permanently. You're not serious, I whisper, but my voice cracks. Oh God, he's serious. Go to my apartment and look for a box labeled Santa's Naughty List. Top shelf of my closet. See for yourself. I'm halfway to the door when the heart monitor gives up. The line going flat, like it's tired of pretending he had time left. Dad's apartment is a shrine to Christmas. Not the classy Pottery Barn kind of Christmas. This is the Walmart on clearance kind. Everywhere you look, there's a red and green assault on the senses. Tinsel dangles like garish cobwebs. A nutcracker army lines the windowsill, their paint chipped like they've been through a war. Fake snow dusts every surface, not sprinkled, but dumped, like he'd been trying to recreate a blizzard indoors. I kick a pile of it near the couch. It puffs up, glittering. The closet, though, that's where things get creepy. Rows of Santa suits hang in perfect order, sorted by decade. The 80s suits are polyester atrocities, faded red, like tomato soup, left in the sun. The newer ones are lush, rich velvets. There's even a Santa pimp cane leaning in the corner. Because, of course, there is. And the smell? That weird mothball meets candy cane funk. It clings to your clothes, gets in your hair. I'd need 3 showers and a priest to feel clean again. That's when I see it. A box on the top shelf, labeled in Sharpie, Santa's Naughty List. My stomach drops. No way that this is real. No way. The box creaks as I pull it down. Years of dust exploding in my face. Inside, the first thing I see is a pair of cracked glasses. Thick, Coke bottle lenses, scratched to hell. Still smeared with something. A fingerprint, maybe. Or worse. Intrigued, I pick them up gingerly, like they might bite. It had a Christmas gift tag, Hanging from it, reading The Neighbor Who Played ABBA on repeat. Next, there's a gold wedding ring, heavy, engraved with Forever Denise. This one has tag dangling from it that reads, "Hired by Denise to take care of her abusive, cheating husband." She gave me fresh baked cookies, still warm from the oven, too. The box bulged with trophies, Christmas tags swinging off them like tiny glittery alibis. At the bottom, a mall Santa hat, its white fur trim stiff and crusted with something dark brown. Blood? Hot chocolate? Both? My hand hovers over it, like touching. It might connect me to him, but I jerk back. My heart pounds in my ears. This is insane. This is nuts. This is impressive. Turns out, Dad wasn't just a professional at making kids smile. He was a professional at making people disappear. The thing about secrets is they're sticky. Once you hear one, it clings to you like gum on a shoe, no matter how much you scrape. Dad's confession isn't just sticking, it's metastasizing. The more I think about it, the more I see his life wasn't two separate halves. Santa and Hitman, jolly old saint and silent assassin. It's all the same guy. And now, I'm the one holding the bag. He's dead. The town's favorite. Mall. Santa. Gone to that big workshop in the sky. Kids will cry when they hear. Some mom will bring them to the mall next week, hoping to see his stupid, twinkly eyes and hear his gravelly laugh. Instead, they'll get some substitute in a cheap suit, the kind who smells like whiskey and regret. That'll be Dad's legacy. A hole in the lives of every snot-nosed kid who sat on his lap, unless I tell the truth. If I do, it won't be crying kids. No. The whole town will lose its collective mind. Imagine this headline. Breaking news. Killer. Kringle caught dead. The local paper will have a field day. They'll dig up every photo of him, grinning in his red suit, surrounded by smiling children, and slap it next to words like murderer in bold block letters. The tabloids will pick it up. Every dumb podcaster with a microphone will start calling him the Silent Santa Slayer. And me? I'll be the idiot who ruined Christmas for the whole town. The funeral smelled like peppermint and formaldehyde. Someone decided Dad's last ride should look like an after-Christmas clearance aisle. Red and white draped the lid, as if trying to sugarcoat the whole thing. And of course, the mall workers showed up in elf hats, because nothing says, "We respect your dead father," like polyester and jingling bells. The service started with a speech from Jerry, the guy who managed the mall. Jerry had a voice like a dying accordion and the charisma of wet cardboard, but he tried. He wasn't just Santa, Jerry said, his words wobbling. He was Christmas. He saved Christmas. Saved it? Like he pulled Christmas from a burning building? You mean he sat in a chair for 8 hours a day while toddlers screamed in his face? Then came the slideshow. Dad with kids. Dad shaking hands. Dad eating cookies that probably came with handwritten death requests. And now it was my turn. I stepped up to the podium, clutching my notes. My palms were slick, my mouth dry. Every eyeball in the room locked onto me like I was the halftime show. Here lies Santa, the town legend, and here comes his loser kid. Fumbling for words, I cleared my throat. Dad was unforgettable, a safe start. Too safe. My hands shook. I glanced down at my notes, then up at the crowd. Their faces blurred. My brain buzzed because, my voice cracked. He was Santa. And a hitman. The room froze. A collective gasp sucked all the air out. Then Jerry laughed. The kind of laugh that makes you wonder if someone's choking. Santa? A hitman? More laughter erupted. Next, you'll tell us Rudolph ran a dip-fighting ring. I blinked. The crowd thought I was joking. Thank God, I faked a chuckle. The kind that burns your throat on the way out. Yeah, I guess he really killed it as Santa, huh? The groans at my pun covered my slip-up, and I pivoted. Hard. But seriously, Dad was the most unforgettable Santa this town ever had. They clapped. Some people wiped tears. And me? I stared at the casket, wondering what was worse, burying the truth with him, or walking around with it, lodged in my head forever. The funeral was barely over when he found me. Grizzled guy in a trench coat. The kind of face that looks like it's been carved out of driftwood. He shook my hand, his grip hard and dry, and said he knew my dad. Frankie, he said, like I should already know who he was. An old associate of your dad's. Associate? What kind of associate? Did Santa have a union? A reindeer mafia? Sorry for your loss, Frankie said, not sounding sorry at all. Your dad was a legend, one of the best in the biz. The biz? I asked, the words tasting like sewer milk. Frankie smirked, like I'd just failed some kind of test. He opened his trench coat, not for a gun, or a bomb, or a flashing incident, but for a business card. The font was a little too cheerful, a little too Comic Sans for what it said. Kringle and Associates. Holiday solutions for your problems. I stared at it like it might bite me. This is a joke, right? Frankie leaned in, breath heavy with something cheap and lethal. Your dad wasn't the only one, he said, his voice like gravel rolled in honey. He pulled a candy cane from his pocket, twisting it between his fingers. Seasonal work. It's got its advantages. Keeps things clean. He paused, watching me, waiting, like there was something I was supposed to say. It's the perfect cover. Frankie smiled, teeth yellowed like a dog just pissed in the snow. He straightened up, sliding his hands into his coat. Your dad always said you'd make a great Santa. You've got the look. My dad spent my whole life teaching me things I didn't realize were lessons. How to lie with a smile. How to disappear in a crowd. How to keep secrets. I always thought he was preparing me for life, but maybe he was just preparing me for this. Frankie's words hung in the air like cigarette smoke, clinging to my skin. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Frankie tipped an imaginary hat and walked away, disappearing into the kind of fog that makes you doubt he was ever really there. I looked at the card again, the words staring back like a dare. Kringle and Associates. Dad always said to find a job that suits you. But some jobs find you. In the distance, I heard bells, maybe wind chimes, maybe the Salvation Army guy packing up. Who knows? What I do know is that I hate kids. I love cookies, and I could probably pull off the beard under the kitchen sink. Spoiler, but a scare warning. MC and other characters talk about being knocked out and a near death from a spider bite. Very mild. Fictional story, but based on Orthodox Christian spiritual warfare. It was a Saturday afternoon when I was 13. My friend Lila and I were playing hide-and-go-seek at her house. Lila was my new friend, but she was fun to hang out with. I also had a friend named Aiden. He was my best friend since I was little, like really little. He looks the same age as me, but he always acted a lot older. He was scared about me going places I shouldn't, and that I should be careful. But he said that a lot with Lila, because I never told my mom about me visiting her. But I thought, as long as I got back between the 2 hours, I got off school, and she got home from work, she would never find out. Lila counted while I tried to find a hiding spot in her big, empty house. My feet echoed as I ran around, and then I found a room under the stairs. I giggled as I closed the door and hid in between some old clothes, a vacuum, a laundry hamper, and the washing machine. Torrid, D930, ready or not, here I come! Ain't no way she is going to find me here. I bet she's afraid of the I found you, she yelped as she opened the door. What? How did you find me? This had to have been the best hiding spot. Lila waved her hand and said, That's not the best one. That one is quite easy to find. I got up and dusted my pants off. And as I walked out, I closed the creaky door. Then I asked her, What is the best hiding spot? Now, why would I tell you that? because then you would know how to find me. But do you want to know? But the way she said it, it made me really want to know. Please, please, please tell me. I won't hide there. I just want to see it. Lila whipped her dark hair and tapped her finger to her chin. You may not want to hide there, but you will probably stay there for some time when you see it. I was confused, but it still made me want to go even more. Follow me, my friend, she said, reaching for my hand. We went past the front door of her house and through the entryway to her kitchen. I hopped on the white tiles as I followed her, and she let me go. Are you ready? She asked. Mm-hmm. I nodded excitedly. She then reached into the pocket of her black coat and pulled out an old key. Then she walked to the weirdest spot ever, her kitchen sink. She bent down to this big lock and fat chains and popped the key in and turned it like it was easy. Then she slowly opened the doors, but with a smile that was weirdly excited for me to see it. And once the doors are opened, I hear a loud whooshing sound and what looked like a big black hole. Whoa! How come I've never seen this before? Has anybody seen it before? Oh yeah, a lot of people have, but only people who choose to listen to me instead of, well, don't mind that. Go ahead and go inside. But where does it go? It won't hurt, will it? I don't want to do things that I know I shouldn't and get hurt. You'll be okay, you promise? Lila said. Look at all the fun games we play together behind your mom's back. Trust me, this is what you want. I felt scared, but I wanted to believe her. I took a few steps toward the sink, and the closer I got, the closer I felt like it was pulling me in, and it was harder to get away. Dee Dee, I heard a voice from above me. Huh? I look up and get a push back from the sink, and the doors slam closed on their own. Before I looked at the voice, I got a quick look at Lila, who quickly put down her foot like she was going to do something, but she didn't want me to see it. I turned around, and in the window above the sink, I saw Aiden looking at me. He had reddish-brown hair, and when the sun hit it, it looked like it was a bright fire. He said with a worried face. Why are you here? I warned you not to come here. Oh, we were just having a little fun. You'll get hurt. Before I could say anything, he looked over to Lila and said, What are you doing? Exploring. Why do you have to ruin the fun? He answered. You are a stranger. A stranger? Me and Dee Dee are best friends. Better friends than you. Clearly, she makes more time for me than you. Besides, how long have you known her for? Since she was baptized. Lila seemed really mad at his answer. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to hurt Aiden's feelings, but I really wanted to have fun. When I looked at Aiden again, he already looked like he was sad because of what she said. And I was scared that what she said was true. I didn't want it to be. I glance over to the big, old clock on the wall and realize that my mom would be home any minute. I look at them both and say, "I have to get home," Aiden told me. "Maybe you should tell your mom about this." I shook my head and said, "No, she would get so mad at me." Aiden didn't seem to like that I said that, but said, "Your choice. Dee Dee, your choice." Then he walked away from the window. I ran home as fast as I could. And thankfully, I got there just in time. I don't think my mom knew at all where I had been. I just acted normal, and we enjoyed dinner together. She even asked, "So how was school today, honey? I heard you had a hard time on the test." I knew I could have done better, but I felt so sleepy. And I think it was from not telling Mom about Lila and keeping it a secret made me tired and not think well. "It was decimals," I told her. She put her fork down and said, "But you're so good at decimals." She looked confused and said, "Dee Dee, you seem to be having a hard time in school lately. Not just with the test, but with things you know, and know really well." I felt warm. I had to come up with something without telling my secret. "I've been doing extra homework, so I stay up late and get sleepy." She didn't seem to like that very much. "Listen, Dee Dee, I want you to be doing your homework when you get home from school, not late in the night. You need your sleep, and you should have plenty of time after school to do it, right?" The whole time she talked, I kept thinking about Lila's kitchen sink. What was under there? Where did it go? Was it really as bad as Aiden made it out to be? "Dee Dee, Dee Dee." My mom snapped me out of my thinking. "Look, hun, you need to finish up and go get some rest. Homework in the afternoon and sleep at night. That's all." I got on the bathroom stool to brush my teeth, and I went to say my prayers. As I did, I had a really bad feeling that I didn't usually have. I felt bad about how I treated Aiden earlier. I hoped he still wanted to be my friend. I turned the switch on my small blue lamp. And as I went to bed, I threw the covers over my head. My blonde hair got in my face as I curled up, confused about my day. Psst! I didn't think anything of it and closed my eyes tightly. Psst! That time was too loud. I threw my blanket off to look around my room. Then I saw someone in the window again. But it wasn't Aiden. Lila stood on the roof outside my window and said, "Hey, you're up." "Lila? What are you doing here? It's past my bedtime." I began to speak in a whisper as I looked really quickly toward my cracked bedroom door. My mom might still be up. Bedtime, schmed time. It doesn't matter as long as you don't get caught. Don't you want to see that portal? But Aiden said not to. Lila rolled her eyes and said, "Aiden isn't saying that because he is worried. Aiden just doesn't want you to have any fun." "But come on, you don't want to be a scaredy cat, do you? You can do what you want. You wanted to see the hiding spot yourself. remember?" With the last word, she said, her eyes lit up. But it wasn't in a good way. I really wanted to see what that black hole was. Maybe she was right. I can do what I want. We were back in her kitchen. She had led me out of my house by a rope she tied to the roof, and I had no idea where it came from. "Are you ready this time?" she asked. I nodded, even though I was really scared, and my heart beat faster than it had beaten. She opened the cabinet doors again, and I was greeted by the loud sound and twirling portal. I slowly tippy-toed toward it, closer and closer and closer. Then Lila pushed me. She grunted. I screamed the loudest scream, and I don't think anyone heard me. As I began to fall down into the dark space, I saw a ledge and held onto it, trying not to let go, because I knew if I fell any further, no one could help me. I turned around, and the last thing I saw was Lila. But it wasn't Lila. She had turned into a nasty creature with horns and a long tongue, and her eyes did the same thing they did when she came to get me from my house. That's what happens when you mess around where you shouldn't while passing on. And she closed the cabinet. I screamed and screamed and screamed, but it just echoed at me. I yelled for someone to help me, but no one was there. I should have listened to Aiden. I yelled again, now crying loudly. I should have listened. The last thing I could think of was to say a prayer. I knew I felt guilt the last time I prayed, but I knew I still had to. I pulled down my nightcap with one hand, but quickly put my hand back on the ledge. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Slam! The cabinets swung open, and there I saw what looked like an angel. Who are you? It's me, Aiden, but you don't look like... Then it made sense. He acted older. He knew me since I was baptized, and he was always trying to keep me safe. You're my guardian angel? One hand slipped, and I was holding on by one hand. Take my hand, and I can help you. I struggled to pull my hand up. I pulled and pulled, and finally, I slapped mine into his, and he pulled me out within the blink of an eye. And again, the cabinet slammed shut. He grabbed me to help me brace for the impact as we hit the floor. I gasped and slowly got up, feeling like I was just beaten up. What just happened? Where is Lila? What did she mean by passing on? Dee Dee, you saw. Lila isn't a human girl. She's a demon, and she went back where she belongs. And I am your guardian angel assigned to you. I've been trying to keep you safe. You almost died. You are knocked out at the moment, and soon you will wake up. I thought my next question would be, how did I die? But he answered before I could ask. The first time you came towards the portal, you were near a nest of spiders, poisonous ones. And because you had disobeyed, and how close he had become to Lila, you put yourself in a very dangerous position. but I pulled you away. This time around, one bit you, and it was almost enough to kill you. But thank the Lord you prayed when you did, before it was too late. Or we'd be in a different situation. I thought about it. If I had passed, it would have been 3 days, and then it would have been the toll houses. And I certainly wasn't ready for them yet. I was shocked. But this is all happening, right? How about hide and seek? What happened with that? It still happened, but you were the only one who could see Lila and me as well. But the portal itself exists, but not in the way you thought may have at first. I stood there and sat back down. What do I do now? What I've told you to do is be honest and listen to those who are trying to protect you. We stopped talking for a minute. I needed to take a moment to think about what happened. We both looked at the moon, and my last question was, when will I wake up? Just keep looking up, he said. Your mom will come to find you here safe. And will I see you again? He looked at me and smiled and said, just continue to live as you should. I will always be here to protect you.